So I'm just trying to put a marker there. We're going to talk about identifying embedding sources. I'm gonna open up my Word document, and I'm going to start typing, kind of typing out my notes. For people to use, and so we're going to start with that. Whenever we're looking at sources, there's multiple ways we can look at them, right? There's multiple ways to look at them, and there's multiple sources to look at. So one of the first things we have to identify is whether it's, what kind of source is it? Is it a print source? Is it an electronic source? So you want to identify, right? The first thing that we got to look at, and I'll switch over here in just a minute as soon as I get some of this typed out. So you may want to look at, talk to experts who can guide your research, right? Over. Yeah, this is actually for my 102 class. Yeah. About to be. Get the fuck out of my way. There we go. All right. We're going to switch over to this. I'm going to blow this up a little bit. So you want to consult experts who can guide your research. These are professors. They are people who are kind of experts in their field. Talk to a librarian. Talk to anybody that you can get a hold of who can help you kind of find the sources that you need to help identify what sources you're going to need. Then you want to start working on developing a working knowledge of standard sources. Right. So when you look at developing a working knowledge of standard sources, what you're really concerned about is you want to look at bibliographies. You want to look at citations within magazines and things of that nature. So what you want to do is you want to pay attention to the names that keep coming up. Okay, these folks are going to be your seminal works. They're going to be the people who are the experts in the field, the people who are on the forefront of things that you're researching. Right? When we talked in class, when we talked about utilizing Google Scholar, which I'll go back to, and we'll look at that here in just a little bit as well. Talked about Google Scholar. There's a cited by number on there, and that number lets you know how many times that source has been used by other authors. The higher that number, generally speaking, the higher that number, the more important that work is to a field of study. The lower that number may not mean that it's insignificant or it's not important. It may be a newer study and it just hasn't been cited as many. But you look at where it's been cited, right? And you start seeing some of those journal articles, some of those journal names getting reused and whatnot, and then it'll show you kind of what you're looking for as a standard, a knowledge of standard sources, right? That's really what we do as we research within our fields, is we begin to become familiar with the people who are the giants, quote unquote giants of our field, right? The next thing is you want to distinguish between primary and secondary sources. Okay? So a primary source, right, is a first-hand account. Okay? So it can be things like newspapers. It can be religious texts. Damn it. There we go. All right. It can be a video of a speech. Things of that nature. Okay? So these are not all of the primary texts that are out there. But by and large, your primary texts are going to be things where they're giving you the 5 W's, right? So if you want to know if it's a primary text, what you're looking for is the who, the what, the when, the where, and to a lesser degree, the how, right? This is a bit of an interpretive thing. But most of our news these days, most of our journalism is not going to be just these facts, right? They're going to try and interpret some of it for us. That's what they do. So the how is always the optional one, but you need to, if you're looking at a religious, if you're looking at a primary text, you want to know who, what, when, and where, right? That's the information you need. So I tell people all the time, if you want to know the difference between journalism and what America calls journalism, go back and look at news articles from the United States on September 12th, 2001, and then look at news articles from the UK on September 12th, 2001. And what you'll see is the difference between those two things. The ones in America are much more sensationalist. They're much more emotional. The ones from England are actually very reserved. They're more like this: who, what, when, and where. And then they give you some information about who, about how we think this occurred or whatnot, or what we knew at that time. And so that's the difference between what you're looking at and as far as primary sources, and what we're going to move next to. Quit it. No. Why is it not letting me do this thing that I needed to do? Damn it. Move in. No. Grr. Scholarly publications are not considered primary. They are not. Things being a pain in my ass. Anyway, I'm just going to start typing and then I'll deal with it in a minute. Secondary sources are analysis of primary sources. This is where people are telling you what they think is the right answer, right? This little bubble right here. No! Fucking assholes. Being a pain in my ass. Why is it not letting me do the thing that I needed to do? Sure. Hang on a minute. Let me do this. I think I figured it out. Chat. I think I figured it out. Watch this. There it is. All right, got it. Now I need to put it back in. Drop this in there. And then drop it back out. Change list level. I need to fucking hotkey that shit. That's what I need to do. And then we're going to back this up. There we go. Got it. All right. Yeah, I got it. I got it. So that's why. So this is why scholarly publications are not considered primary sources, is because they are analysis. That's what we do as academics. We analyze a bunch of shit. So everything that you guys are going to come across in your research and whatnot are probably going to be secondary sources, even if they're news articles, because if they're interpreting anything for you, right, then they're basically turning themselves into a secondary source, which is what most of our journalism is today. There's no longer, the whole dragnet thing of, just the facts, and they're not doing that anymore. They have to interpret, they have to digest it for people, because they think we're all just a bunch of fucking dumbasses, which half the country is. That's why there's an average, right? So you think about the dumbest person and half the country is dumber than that. That's that's the truth of it all right there. So there's that. No, I'm not being generous. That's called math. It's called math. There's an average, and the average is right there. When people are like, oh, well, you know, he's an average student, he gets C's. No, compared to the rest of the country, you're a little bit above average. So, all right. So how do we go about doing this stuff, right? There's a couple things that we're going to work on, right? The first piece of this is searching, right? We're gonna do some searching. We're gonna do some kind of no, dumb baby. Why is it doing that? Don't do that. Do this one. I want this one. I want that one. That's the one I want. All right. So you can perform a keyword search. Oops. So this is when we talked in class about your theoretical construct. This is why the theoretical construct is so important, right? Because it's going to allow you to do a keyword search, right? So if you don't have your theoretical construct, if you don't know what it is you're looking for, how do you find what you need? You can't, right? This is the theoretical construct becomes your grocery list. It becomes whatever analogy you want to use for you to make sure that you stay on task and that you stay focused, right? And you're not out there just fucking, impulse buying a bunch of shit, and reading a bunch of shit that you don't need to do, right? Knowing your theoretical construct will save you hours and hours on your research process, because you're only going to find the things that apply to what your research is about, okay? So you can do a keyword search. You can browse, right? If you're not sure, browse, right? This helps generate ideas, right? Browse, look around, see what's out there, right? Click on some related terms, right? See what's out there, right? If you've got a large subject matter and you're like, let's say if you're looking at climate change, that we write books on climate change. That's too big of a concept for you to worry about a 10-page paper on. What you need to do is you need to pare that down. You need to focus it, right? So go and find some articles about climate change, but then look and see what are related topics, things that are kind of close to that that you might be interested in, right? Like the effects of climate change on coastal habitats, or the effect of climate change upon deforestation. Things of that nature, right? Migratory bird system, whatever it is, right? You can look at climate change and its effects upon, and then you're paring that down into a subject matter that's much more manageable, and it's going to give you the length that you need to make sure that you're hitting the mark of 10 pages. If you get too focused, though, right, you end up stagnating what it is that you're looking for, right? So where you get too stagnated is you look at specific events, right? So if you look at, let's say if you're looking at oil, like the effect of oil spills on the environment, right? If you look at just one oil spill, like what's the one that was in the Gulf of Mexico, the BP? I can't remember the name of it. God damn it, you guys know what I'm talking about. The oil, what was it, the Horizon, the BP Horizon? I think that's the name of it, if I remember correctly. So if you're looking at that, the Valdez was in Alaska. That was the oil tanker. I'm talking about the oil platform. It was British Petroleum oil platform in the Gulf of Mexico. I think it was BP Horizon. That's what it's called. I'll look it up later. But if you just look at that event, that's too small, right, for you to get 10 pages out of it, because all you've got is the who, what, when, where, how, right? That's all you've got. There's no extrapolation. There's nothing you can tie it to. There's no way to make it where it's going to be a larger concept, right? Unless you kind of do that intentionally. What's a better thing to do is to look at the effect of oil spills upon marine life, right? Then you can use the Exxon Valdez as an example of what happens. You can use the BP Horizon event as something that happens. You can look at all these different spills, and now you've got evidence and you've got examples that you use to make a claim about how these things affect marine life, right? So I hope that makes sense to everybody, right? You've got to find that kind of sweet spot in the middle between large concept and small event, and then stick in there and utilize the events as support for your claim. Okay. You can perform a journal or newspaper title search, right? This allows you to kind of move into specificity, right? Is there a journal out there that deals with whatever it is that you're looking at? Is there a news magazine? Is there something out there that specifically addresses your topic, right? That's a little less effective these days because everything's moving online, and there's 8 billion fucking websites out there. But if you're in a database, you can do a journal, a title search for journals. See if there's anything within that specifically deals with that subject matter. There may be, right? There may not be, but you may come across some titles that you haven't seen before. Okay, so there's kind of how you search. Now, the last thing I'm going to say is avoid what I have come to call procrastinating searching. Okay, procrastinating searching is not an actual word; it's one that I made up, right? But I use it to kind of define kind of what we all do on the internet. Is we start in a place, and then you just you start clicking links, right? You keep clicking links, and all of a sudden you started over here looking at fucking oil spills, right? And now you're watching fucking ad videos for Dawn liquid detergent while they clean ducks, right? That's right. And then you're like, oh, the ducks is so cute. Oh my God, right? All of that shit, right? All of that shit is procrastinating searching, right? You get off topic, right? You go down a rabbit hole, right? And you end up in this kind of procrastinating searching. It's a mix of procrastinating and thinking you're doing something that's useful when you're not, right? So avoid that. If you find yourself going down that rabbit hole, yeah, what I was doing yesterday. That's most of us on the internet, prospect. That's most of us. I'm guilty of it myself, right? I get an idea in my head, right? And whatever I'm doing, I'm working on something, and I go, and I start searching, right? And it's me procrastinating. We're all guilty of it, right? It's us being kind of distracted by our own kind of vices in the world, right? So just be aware when that happens. That's your body and your brain telling you, hey, get up and take a break for a little while. Go find something to do, right? Like Bulbanoff, thank you for the follow. Greatly appreciate it. My alerts are off on this screen because I'm doing this whole teaching thing. So everything's been shut off. So I apologize for that. But I do appreciate the follow. Thank you very much. Welcome in. So recognize when your body says you need a break. Recognize when your brain says I need a break, right? If you're studying, if you're working on stuff, right, and you find yourself going down that procrastinating searching path, it's time for you to give your brain a break. Go do something you enjoy, right? I tell students all the time, right? You need a break that's just as long as how long you worked, right? You need to reward your brain. You need to reward yourself, right? So if you study, if you're working on something for 30 minutes, right, and you feel that moment kick in where you're just like, I need a break, right? Then go take a 30-minute break, right? Now at the end of that, hold yourself accountable, right? Set a timer, right? Bring your ass back and get back to work at the end of that 30 minutes, right? But you need to break. Your brain needs to revitalize. It needs to refocus. It needs to be able to kind of take a moment and think about things, and you'll come back and you'll be much more effective working in small sections that way than you will try to sit down and do something for 3 hours. Because let's be honest, people. Let's just be real honest. There's things I love to do that I don't want to do for 3 fucking hours. Okay? That's reality, right? You think of the thing you like the most in the world, whatever that is, whether it's a food, a physical event, whatever it is, you think of the thing that you love the most in the world. Do you want to do that for 3 hours? I'm going to say no. And you guys may be like, oh, I'd do sex for 3 hours. No, you won't. No, you won't. First of all, most of you can't. Second of all, if you've got a partner who's willing to do that, well, I don't know where you found that person, right? Most people are like, whatever, get out of here, we're done, right? Drinking, I don't know how y'all drinking. Like I'll sit and have a drink with you, right? We can sit and have some social drinking, that'd be fine. But to sit and drink and like to get drunk, you're not gonna make it 3 hours. Right? Unless you have something else that's gathering your attention. That's why people go to bars. If they stayed at home and drank like that, they'd be passed out in an hour. So, yeah, there's always breaks involved. Always. Think about it, right? There's always things, right? You know, how many guys, when you're driving somewhere, right? If you're on the highway for a long period of time, you fucking phase out, right? And you look back around and you're like, Jesus Christ, I don't remember the last 20 miles, right? That's because our brain is driving the car, right? But it's also doing this thing where we just kind of fade off and we think about something else, right? We're thinking about other shit, right? That's how our brains work. We need breaks from things, right? So I think I've beaten that horse enough, right? Take breaks. Take frequent breaks. Make sure they're the same length of time you spent working. You'll be much more productive that way, okay? I don't know why you're here, Brendan, other than you just love the dulcet tones of my sultry voice. That's what it is. There's 2 words somebody has to look up. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to evaluate. We're going to look at evaluating print sources. And Amy, if you have something to add here, I would absolutely appreciate your input, because this is what you do for a living. Yeah, Joe takes breaks. It's actually a professional driver, exactly, right? So evaluating print sources. So here's what I tell you how to do this, right? You want to read introductory sections. Okay? What this is going to do is it's going to give you an overview of the argument that they're presenting. It's going to give you what their scope is. It's going to give you their limitations, right? All the things that I asked you guys to give me in the good Lord, I'm having a brain cramp. The proposals that I had you do at the beginning of the semester, right? When I asked you about scope and I asked you about limitations and all that stuff, this is where you're going to get all of that information, right? Read introductory sections. You're going to get all of that information in those introductory pieces. It's going to tell you whether that book is actually useful to you, right? Introductory sections also include. I'm going to go back here and I'm going to put abstracts. Okay. Read introductory sections and abstracts. Abstracts are about 150 words, right? And they're gonna give you a lot of that information very quickly, right? You cannot cite an abstract. You cannot use an abstract as a research source, but you can read it to find out whether that source is going to be useful for you or not. Most publications will ask the author, right, if they're professional publications and scholarly journals, they will ask the author for an abstract before they go to publication so that they can apply that to their databases or their whatever as part of their marketing information, right? The second thing, oops, examine table of contents, okay, and the index, okay. The table of contents is going to tell you what's in that book. It's going to tell you what chapters are in there, the material that's quoted. It may even have a brief description of the information that's within that chapter. The index is at the back of the book, and the index is a list of keywords, right, and topics that are discussed within that book. Okay, often they give you page numbers, right, inclusive page numbers, right. That's also a good place to find some ways to kind of pare down your source material if you need to do that. You can look at an index. It will have a topic, and then it will have related topics listed underneath it, and kind of look and they'll be indexed that way. If you look at a book and your topic is only discussed once on page 49 in a 300-page book, that book's probably not going to be helpful to you. Okay, that's just a good rule of thumb. You know, that's trying to find one Skittle in a bowl of M&Ms. You're on a kind of a hunt of futility at that point, right? So Amy said journal articles will often offer abstracts. If I find a source online that you can only find the abstract and you want to use the source, right? Send the information. She'll try to find the whole article for you, right? You guys should have Amy's email and email address in the email that I sent out. I'm not going to put her email out on the internet because that's just a recipe for fucking disaster. Okay. Sorry, I need some water. My throat's kind of dry. Indices are a great way to find out whether that book's going to be useful for you. If you look and you see that there's a chapter in that book that's about your topic, right? Read that chapter. Don't read the whole fucking book, okay? There's no need for you to try to read 300 pages when you only need these 20, right? Or whatever it is, right? Library of Congress subject headings, right, are very useful for finding books that make main ideas of your topics, right? Thank you, Amy. The next thing you want to do is you want to check the notes and bibliographic information. References, I should say. Okay? What you're looking for here is what I talked about earlier, right? What are called seminal works, right? You're building that knowledge base, a working knowledge, right? That's what you're looking for. This is how you do it. You look through people's bibliographies, you see the names that keep showing up, you see the articles, the books, whatever it is that keeps showing up. If it keeps showing up and it's used by several different people, go get that article, go get that book, right? Because you need to read that shit, right? Don't take the excerpts. Here's the other thing is, if somebody's quoting somebody else's material, do not quote somebody quoting somebody else. God damn it, right? Go find the article, go find the book that they quoted, and use the quote yourself from the direct source. Do not put in your research paper a fucking quote of a quote. Okay? Do not do that. I will hammer you to the ends of the earth for that shit, right? Because it's lazy. Okay? Go read it for yourself. Don't trust somebody else to interpret somebody's work for you or tell you what's valuable about that work. Go read it for yourself and find what's valuable for your argument. Right? I can hear the papers rustling now. People like, oh my God, I think I did that. Right? Right? The last thing to do is to read, right? Skim the information around your keyword, right? We'll use that. Skim the information around your keyword. See whether it's useful. See how much they discuss about your topic. If it's just a one or two sentence thing, it's useless. Get away from it. They're just mentioning it in passing. Then they're not going to give you anything you don't already know. It's just something you can't just look up, right? What I would tell you to do, Lone Prospect, is I would tell you to go find that original quote in the original source material, which does two things. It gives you another source, right, for your works cited page, right? The second is you're taking it directly from the source, and you can determine whether it's been quoted in the correct context or not, which then allows you to evaluate the author who's giving you their thoughts on it and determine whether you actually agree with it or not. If you just take the piece they cut out, right? Like if I just give you a picture and it shows a certain thing, and I tell you that this is a picture of this, and you go, oh, okay, but then I draw back and you get to see the entire picture, and it doesn't do what I say it does, right? It's not doing what I say. We've all seen these types of things where they, like what the media shows us, what the government tells us, right? Where they pull back, and there's a whole another narrative that's taking place there. It allows you to kind of evaluate that, and then determine whether you want to utilize that person's discussion of that as part of your discussion of that quote, right? I think that's a much better way to do it. Does that make sense? If that makes sense, Prospect. Okay, cool. All right. Okay. So from there, we're going to move on to evaluating internet sources or electronic sources. This is the most prominent thing that people are going to run into. Evaluating these sources is important, right? Because it's a completely different set of criteria. Printed sources, right, go through a process of vetting. They go through a process. That's what we started out with, identifying and vetting sources. Print sources, when you look at what's in a book, what's in an article, what's in a journal, they go through a process of peer editing and peer review. And that process is they send that out to, before it goes to print, they send it out to a panel of experts within that field. That information is then read and verified by the experts within that field, and they offer editing comments. They offer revision comments. They come back and say, you've got this partially correct, but maybe the new research shows this thing. And so they give you an opportunity to kind of make that as current as possible. And so it's peer reviewed, and then it's peer edited, meaning that we make sure that the information is absolutely as correct as we can make it at the point of publication. So that's the process that print material goes through, right? Popular sources like books that you read on the New York Times bestseller, they don't go through that process. It's not the same thing. They have an editor, but they don't really do a good job. When it comes to an academic source, we want to make sure that the information that's being put out there is the most accurate and make sure that it's correct for people to be able to use for their research, for students to read and folks to kind of get aware of what's going on out there. That's what happened with Wikipedia. Wikipedia was putting out a bunch of stuff, and teachers were like, don't use Wikipedia, right? Most of you guys have been told that. And so what's happened is with Wikipedia over time is professors and teachers and whatnot, experts in the field have come along and said, hey, you know what? If people are going to use this, then let's make it better. Let's, instead of just bashing it all the time, let's do our part to make it a better source of material. Since people are using it all the time, let's get it out there and make sure people are getting the right information. And so what happens is you see Wikipedia's policies change, you see the content change, and it depends on what you're looking for, right? It still can be a shit show, right? But in a lot of ways, it is a much better place to go than just doing a fucking Google search for something and just, you know, Uncle Bob's fucking blogosphere, right? You know, while he's sitting up in his cabin in the woods surrounded by fucking landmines and fucking guns, right? Spouting his shit. So, which, you know, I want a landmine too. Damn it, Bob, stop hoarding them. All right. So what we're going to do here is we're going to look at how do we evaluate internet and electronic sources, right? We need to look for some different information because there's not a peer editing, peer review process. So what we're going to do is we're going to evaluate the author of the site. Okay. Through this process, what we're looking for is we're looking for what is their expertise, what makes them someone you should listen to, right? Is it Uncle Bob sitting in his fucking cabin out in the woods, right, surrounded by landmines and guns, or is this somebody who actually has worked in the field, has done some, you know, some training and whatnot, and somebody that you should listen to, right? Yeah, I recommend looking up the background of the author. Do they actually have a background in education to write about the topic, right? That's exactly what we're looking for, right? Who's the author? What do you know about them, right? What can you find out about them? Then we want to look at evaluating the organization that supports the site. So this is going to allow us to look for bias, right? Here's the deal. There are lots of organizations out there. There are lots of companies that are pushing their own agenda, right? So you want to look at where do they get their money, right? What's the organization that pushes the site, puts it out there, right? Is it Johns Hopkins University, right, who's pushing the information, or is it DuPont or Dow Chemicals, right? There's a significant difference between those two source materials, right? So, for example, a number of years ago, it's been 10, 15 years now. I can't remember exactly when it was. There was we had some budget cuts in higher education. It affected everybody, right? And we're having some more of those, right? This is why it becomes important, right? The University of Michigan, right? Division I school, right? Great research university, do lots of really great things out there in the world and whatnot. They got approached by DuPont, right? If you don't know who DuPont is, they're the family who owns the color blue. Okay? That's how rich them motherfuckers are. Okay? They're a paint company. They're a plastic company. They do lots of stuff like that. They approached the University of Michigan and they said, "Hey, we know you guys are having some budget shortfalls, right? We'd like to build you a state-of-the-art research facility, right, to help kind of draw in some new students, right? Bring people to your yeah, their family does. Their family owned that's how they made their money in the beginning of their fortune. Yeah, it is possible. Okay. Let me finish it and I'll get back to the color blue, right? So they came to them and said, "Hey, we want to build you the state-of-the-art research facility." And the University of Michigan said, "That'd be great. We'd love you to do that, you know." And they said, "Well, but here's what we need from you. We need you to allow us to approve any research that's going to be published out of your new laboratories." So what they're asking for is they're asking for censorship of your student body, of your research facility that they built for you, right? So the University of Michigan took the money, right? So now we've got a university that's kind of compromised, right? So that's what I'm talking about. We evaluate the support, the organization that supports the site, right? This is extremely important when you're talking about environmental issues, when you're talking about any type of governmental issues. You want to know who's giving them their money, right? Where it comes from, right? So the color blue, right? All right. So prior to the DuPont family was the family who figured out how to make blue without using lapis lazuli, right, and things of that nature, right? That's how we made it before. We would crush up gems into powder and then dissolve them, right, and into a liquid. They figured out how to make blue, right? DuPont blue, right? That was the only color that was out there. So if you go back and you scratch paint on old houses, right, in the early 1900s, right, what you'll get to if those houses have been painted over, what you'll eventually get to is you'll get to a layer of blue, right? Yeah, the cyan color, exactly. The cyan blue. It was called DuPont blue, and you'll find houses were painted that color because blue was always been the color of rich people, right? So people could get blue paint, and all of a sudden they went crazy, right? And they just started painting everything blue, right? But yeah, they do absolutely own the copyright on specific, like the paint that's on my Harley Davidson, right, is copyrighted to Harley Davidson. It is a proprietary color. That's what proprietary means. If you look at the word, I think I'm spelling this right. I think I spelled that right. Proprietary. I think that's right. That looks right. Right. Proprietary means that it is a color that they created, that they own it, right? It means it is their color, and nobody else can use it without their explicit written permission. So the color on my Harley Davidson, right, is a proprietary color to Harley Davidson. It was only made in 2003, and if I want to repaint my Harley Davidson, I have to go to Harley Davidson and I have to tell them, I have to show them my title that says, hey, I own this bike and it's this color. And then they will mix me a gallon. They will never mix you less than a gallon of that paint, and that paint costs $850 a gallon. Okay? Yeah. That's what proprietary allows you to do. Allows you to set the market value on something, right? And sue people when they use it without your permission. Okay. So that's the stuff. That's what we're looking at bias, right? The next piece is you want to look and evaluate the purpose of the site. Okay? All right. What's their goal, right? Are they there to advance argument? Or is it propaganda? Okay? What's the purpose of the site, right? So we've got different ways to look at sites, right? We've got .coms, right? Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's why when people get near on my bike, I'm like, hey, fuck away from my shit, right? .com, right? We have a .com. What's the purpose of a .com? Commerce, right? Their purpose is to make money, right? That's what they're there to do. That's what a .com's for, right? We have a .net, right? .net is a way to connect like sources, right? We have let me see. We have .orgs. These are nonprofits. Understand that they still can have an agenda, okay? Nonprofit organizations still have an agenda. Bikers Against Child Abuse, the organization I work with, we are a 501c3 entity. We are a nonprofit organization, right? We're a group of committed volunteers. Nobody gets paid to do what we do. But do you think we have an agenda? You're goddamn right we do, right? And that agenda is to make sure that we get as many child abusers, child molesters off the street, right? Everybody has an agenda, absolutely, right? So nonprofit organizations are not necessarily, unbiased. People used to say that, well, nonprofit organizations are less biased than corporations. Today, I don't think that's true. Because everybody is competing for a piece of that market dollar, whatever that is, right? PETA, the People for Ethical Treatment of Animals, is competing for the exact same market dollar as the people who are selling beef, chicken, pork, right? They're trying to get a piece of that money. They're trying to get you to stop paying for beef, chicken, and pork and whatnot, and give them their money so that they can make sure animals are ethically treated, right? So, so that you just gotta be aware of that, right? And then there's .edus, right? .edus are educational entities. Okay, educational entities. This, as I just stated with the DuPont and the University of Michigan thing, you still have to evaluate their information by the same criteria that you evaluate everything else. You can't go, well, it's a school, so it's trustworthy. It just won't work anymore because there are too many people getting paid to the college that I work for. They're always talking about how we can better serve the commercial industries within our city, right? They want us to, and this is what we're fighting against as faculty, is we're constantly fighting against the push of the administration to gather that corporate money so that they can pad their retirement account or whatever the fuck they're going to do with it, right? They're damn sure not going to pay me anymore, right? So, but they want us to work with these corporations so that they can make more money for the college, right? And then in turn, what ends up happening is they end up handing us curriculum and saying, here, teach this because this is what we need our employees to be able to do. And there was a huge fight between our IT and our security network guys and a local company here in Kansas City and our administration about that. And the faculty won that fight, right? And so, and that's exactly what we're trying to resist, right? If we're trying to resist the push of corporate entities into higher education to make us be training people as automatons, right? This is all they need to know. This is all they need to know. No, that's fine if you're in a vocational program. If you want to be a mechanic, right? If you want to be an electrician, if you're right, then there's a way to do that and go do that. But if you're talking about training people, within traditional liberal arts, no, we're not going to bow and curtsy to that. So, all right. So that's the key to that little thing right there. All right, I'm going to scroll up a little bit and then change this back out. Okay. The next thing we want to do is we want to evaluate the information. Oops. Let me put an M in there. That'll work. On the site. Okay. We want to look at, is it recent? Is it relevant? Is it accurate? Is it reliable? Okay. Those are the questions you want to ask, right? What's its publication date? Is this information tied directly to my theoretical construct, right? That's the relevance question. Is it accurate? Can I find this information here and somewhere else? This is what's called trust but verify. You find the information in one place, you want to make sure that you find it somewhere else that you can verify that information is accurate, right? And then is it reliable? Is the source reliable? Where did it come from? And that's the stuff that you want to look at, right? Flip my notes here. Okay. All right. That's all that we've got as far as identifying vetting sources, right? Shit, I lost my place where I was going to talk about literacy. So, does anybody have any questions? Anything you want to add or ask? Please just throw it out there. There's what I'm looking for.